there's one more thing. It's kind of related to the draft, and we were going back and forth on devil's advocates, and I've got a couple, but Jason hit me with this one, and I immediately wanted to fight him. Like I think I actually sent him like the gif of
the death letter was anonymous. Was that you? The severed horse head, was that you too?
And he told me this before the draft lottery, and I wanted to fight him then, but with the results of the draft lottery, it just seemed so timely that there was no reason to not go ahead and have this be the devil's advocate of the week. So without further ado, Coldiron, what are you arguing on behalf of today?
Well, can't talk enough about what's been going on this week with the San Antonio Spurs. Obviously, they got that one pick. They got Wemby. They've got a generational prospect coming in. They've got They've got Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson and a couple other really interesting young pieces. And they've got this generational player and a generational, generally considered one of the top 2 or 3 greatest coaches ever in Popovich, who's going to be around, and he's got all the experience. He brought along David Robinson, and he's one of the 20 or 30 greatest players ever. And he was there for Tim Duncan, and he helped Tim Duncan become a generational player. And he helped develop Tony Parker and Ginobili and all these guys. And he's adapted his style, and there's basically no chinks in the armor. But I've been imagining, or let me back up a second. I assumed that Popovich's future would be something like he would coach for another 10 or 20 years as the Spurs coach, and somewhere along because he's a vampire. Let's face it. Look at him. He's a vampire. He doesn't age, right? So I think most people would agree, I was under the assumption that he would keep coaching for 10 or 20 years, and somewhere along there, everybody who remembered that he started coaching in the 90s would die off, and then everybody else would just like roll with it. Would be like, well, I'm not going to question. He's just always there, right? So up until this week, it never occurred to me that he wouldn't just always be the coach of Spurs forever. But today I'm going to ponder the question, just what if? What if Gregg Popovich is actually overrated? What if he is largely the product of circumstances, of being gifted generational players? What if he's not a vampire and he is actually aging, and he's actually either on the verge of or already starting to lose his shit? What if? And if he's not, if he is fully intact, history says, while he does have a bunch of titles, Wembanyama is one player. He would be, in the best case scenario, you would have one Hall of Famer on the roster. History says that Popovich would then need to find 2 or 3 more Hall of Famers to actually have a chance at a title with this team. History shows, 3 or 4 Hall of Famers required. Just saying. So, I just want to say, it's possible that either he's not a vampire and he ages and he gets bad, or 2, possibly he's been overrated this whole time and been a product of his situation. That's the devil's advocate.
Rude. For starters, just rude. And I think Tim Duncan is one of the 10 best players ever. I don't like where do you have Tony Parker? Where do you have Manu? Yeah, they're Hall of Famers, but they're Hall of Famers because they played with Tim Duncan and were coached by Gregg Popovich and were given a system where they could thrive. And a lot of the credit does have to go to the front office and Popovich. I think Popovich goes out of his way to credit the front office, to credit the players. before the lottery, he said the Spurs didn't deserve the number 1 pick because they had already had all the luck in the world with getting Robinson. Like, for me, I think the system works the way it does because Popovich is so willing to share the success with the front office, with all these other people. And so I think he kind of breeds it. Whereas Phil Jackson, he can get the stars and he can get the rings too, but he doesn't breed the same culture that Popovich does with the players. You don't hear former players talk about any coaches really the way they talk about Popovich. And for me, the case you might have is he might be a little overrated as an X's and O's coach. He doesn't like the 3-pointer, though he has embraced it. He has verbally said he wishes the game didn't have it. So like I can see that case you can make, but in terms of overall, I think everything he brings to the table is just, it's the secret of winning. It's the secret of success. And it's what makes a franchise like the Spurs be able to go to the playoffs 20 straight years when it took you guys 16 to get back. Oh, he's quiet. I even muted myself so he could rebuttal, and he's just like,
was I supposed to respond to that? I was just letting you.
Oh yeah, like that's why I stopped. That's why I muted myself. I was like, okay, I've talked enough. I've went on and on. It was finally time for me to shut up.
I think you guys made your case, and Popovich is.
So how much of your chest do you believe that with, wholeheartedly, or just a little bit?
You can take that answer off the air. For the purposes of the show, I'm just making the case. I'm not going to tell you where. I'm just saying it's possible.
That is fair. And again, you can make the case, but the man is still on my Mount Rushmore of NBA head coaches.